Hola a todos, gracias por venir. Y ahora voy a switch in English. I'm going to present to you a project I did last year at the GSD about Lima, and in my point of view, one of the most difficult issues we have to deal in the city where I was born. So in Lima, as a city with fast urban growth, heritage and development have often created friction zones where economic forces collide with preservation policies. Lima was founded in the circle, you see there, by the Spaniards in a huge fertile valley in the middle of the desert that was already inhabited by successive civilizations as far as 45 centuries ago. This valley was already extensively intervened with a complex network of canals, temples, and administrative centers, and the Spanish city occupied a reduced surface until the 1900s. And from the 1940s on, the explosive growth of the city has been characterized by incremental organic growth, occupying all the available land between the Pacific Ocean and the Andes Mountains. In fact, today, more than 360 pre-Columbian archaeological sites are located inside the urban grid. It's the dots you see there. And making this city one of the largest patrimonial areas in South America, it's even more than Cusco. What seems today built carpet laid over the desert, what was a fertile valley before, it was in fact a fragile cultural landscape, punctuated by a series of sacred pyramids which are in beige color. And in the last 50 years, this landscape was literally covered by formal and informal dwellings, producing frictions over heritage sites like this, very near from Universidad Católica, where I teach. And this encroachment happened systematically. Walls were built to protect these places, even if legislation is supposed to ensure their preservation. This legislation values the object over the relationship between the objects, the building over the cultural landscape. So what was a system of sacred places and territorial infrastructure ended as mutilated and incomprehensible earth mounds. And this situation has transformed them into misunderstood enclaves, and I have put street views because it's like a little bit higher than normal, and still we hardly see all these archaeological coexistences. This situation have transformed these spaces in urban black holes. These sites don't participate in urban life. They don't have any imaginary in the city and are seen by citizens as meaningless voids in the city. In most of cases, they are abandoned and neglected, becoming the extraordinary urban black holes within the urban tissue, hopelessly attracting urban growth in search for new land to expand the city. This phenomenon is destructive in most cases, and the gravitational attraction towards these black holes doesn't spur garbage, political science, nor indifference. And this is valid not only for housing, but almost for everything we can imagine. This site, for example, was protected by authorities. We see the red protected area. But at the same time, a sand quarry was allowed to operate in its surroundings, outside this red line. And it's more or less, there are 3 or 4 heritage sites disappearing each year from Lima. The challenge I proposed to my students at the GSD was how to introduce a new urban imaginary in the city, allowing intangible values to concretize intangible proposals. Considering these urban black holes as a network of spaces with multiple urban values beyond heritage. We don't necessarily consider a direct intervention on the ruins, but rather setting the conditions to preserve them. And we made a very simple operation. What if the urban black holes were considered as potential public spaces? No? As Pedro was saying the other, why if the thing that matters is doing public spaces? They could easily match the huge deficit of green areas and public spaces that has Lima. It's almost the same. Lima has now 2.8, I think, square meters per inhabitant. And the 5,200 hectares of deficit green areas are matched by the 4,800 hectares of heritage sites. So we choose 3 emblematic sites that could challenge our ability to imagine new scenarios for the city. But for practical reasons, I'm only going to show you El Paraíso, the one in the north. And I hope this functions. Okay. El Paraíso is located in the northern valley. It is the first known religious and administrative center in Lima. Its construction began 40 centuries ago, 40, counting up to 12 pyramids. Urbanization is arriving to this valley, and even if the setting can seem still relatively idyllic, urban pressure is menacing the ruins. Too much sound here. Doesn't matter. In 2013 only, unscrupulous developers completely destroyed one of the pyramids to create a new urbanization. You see the urbanization? And even if they were all stopped, the question still remained of what to do to prevent further attacks with something more than a fence or security guards. The site is directly related to the Chillón River, also neglected and menaced of invasion of its river valleys. So it was until recently one of the most fertile valleys in the Peruvian coast, with a natural spring, Chuquitanta, and a mineral water brand that no longer exists, of course. And in the last 10 years, the agricultural land has been constantly shrunk by industry, informal urban growth, dump sites, pig farms, etc. Today, the water is so polluted that it makes agricultural land not appropriate for edible farming. Still, there are growing crops there for edible products. If nothing is done, constantly increasing urban land value will continue its unstoppable search for available land. And even if El Paraíso is legally protected, it will some way pay the price of orthodox conservation. Indeed, it is paying right now this price, as I was telling you. One of its pyramids disappeared 3 years ago, and solid waste pervades in the river, while monumental walls, as you see, down here, that at the same age as the Egyptian pyramids, are surrounded by waste and indifference. So, but we think this heritage is also its most important asset, and an opportunity to revert this trend. The temples and administrative centers, seen as a network of heritage sites along the river, are strong enough to cement a partnership between the stakeholders that today are considered as harmful agents for the preservation of landscape. The strategy is simple. We propose to expand the protection zone, but to associate the stakeholders to create a productive park able to give economic and social value to the land. I'm not going to explain everything because we have 12 minutes. But infrastructure-based industry can ally with landscape-based industries, the community and the Ministry of Culture. Tourism industry and community can benefit from a new and expanded protected area. And the project should be time sensitive, allowing to build up this association in time, transforming the use of land in time also, and preserving the rural and cultural landscape. The economic urban forest will provide benefits for local stakeholders, create new public green space for the city, and restore soil for opening new possibilities for agriculture. Heritage sites that are seen there in brown can provide touristic value to the park. And in order to do that, the first move is the displacement of the access road, today a rural path, in order to protect El Paraíso and potentiate the infrastructure-based activities. The power plant, the water treatment plant, but also the dam site and the pig farms that are all in the other side of the river. And the bridge crossing the Chillon River will filter water and collect solid waste that will be brought to the dam site. Other pedestrian bridges will provide further water filtration. The existing network of pre-Columbian canals that are still in use will set up and will serve as an agent for preserving open space in the age of urbanization. We Peruvians are very, very good in filling space, but not in keeping the voids. So the water, we don't see anything there, but the water treatment infrastructure that is half new, half pre-Columbian, will define the edges of this productive park. And what is already considered a urban zone, but is not yet built, will serve as land for building community service and housing, while making a transition between the city and the park. This buffer zone will treat grey water from the city and will be then put into the existing pre-Columbian irrigation canals. And non-edible crops will be promoted at the first stage, some of them associated to productive housing. Pre-Columbian crops like the colored native cotton or river bamboo, is carrizo, we call it carrizo, that is used for construction, will help build local economies and preserve the cultural landscape that is essential to understand the relationship between the ancient remains. And hopefully we will construct a new imaginary for the city. This project we are going to publish the 3 projects we have proposed, and we'll make a publication, and we have Our sponsor is a foundation, a Peruvian foundation, that is going to promote this new, like a critical conservation policy to be introduced to the legislation in Peru. Thank you very much.